There was a moment this season when it looked like the Knicks had hit their ceiling. The offense felt clogged. The spacing, non-existent. Every possession seemed like a battle, with defenders stacking the paint and daring the wrong guys to shoot. It wasn't just a slump, it was a fundamental flaw in how the team functioned. But what if I told you that in the middle of a playoff run, with all eyes on them, the Knicks didn't just survive this issue, they cracked it wide open. For weeks, one glaring issue haunted the Knicks, like a shadow they were playing 4-on-5 basketball. Not literally, of course, but the way defenses were treating Josh Hart, it may as well have been. Teams were sagging off him completely, using his man to help clog the lane, jam up pick-and-roll actions, and kill any hope of easy offense. It wasn't just Hart either. At times, the floor spacing around Jalen Brunson collapsed, with little pressure coming from the corners or the weak side. And when you're asking your best player to constantly create in a phone booth, eventually it catches up. That was the problem. But how did they solve it? The Knicks didn't panic. They didn't bench Hart. They didn't overhaul the rotation. What they did instead was re-engineer their entire offensive ecosystem around that weakness, using Hart not as a shooter, but as a screener, a mover, a trigger point. It sounds simple, but the implications were massive. Rather than keeping him tucked in the corner, where his man could cheat into the paint with zero consequence, they began dragging him into the heart of every action. High ball screens, empty corner pick-and-rolls, ghost screens, anything that forced his defender to actually make a decision. And once that started happening, the floor cracked open. Now defenders couldn't just sit in help. If Hart was involved up top, his man had to step out. That meant the pull-up game for Brunson became a legitimate threat again. That meant closeouts started happening, rotations started breaking down, and suddenly, those brutal possessions from earlier in the season, they were gone. One sequence tells the story perfectly. Brunson brings it up. It looks like a normal spread pick and roll, but here comes Hart, sprinting into a high screen. The defense is expecting drop coverage. Instead, Brunson snakes around, and because the help can't come from Hart's man anymore, he's too high up. There's no second line of defense. Brunson pulls up. Bang. Simple. Efficient. Devastating. But they didn't stop there. They started stacking actions. One screen bleeds into another. A double drag becomes a flare screen, becomes a slip to the rim. The more they involved Hart, the more he became a puzzle the defense couldn't solve. Even without scoring, he was creating chaos. And in the playoffs, that chaos is gold. Now add in a healthy Mitchell Robinson and Deuce McBride sharing the floor. This wasn't just a fix, it was a transformation. With Mitch back in the mix, the Knicks could go to a more traditional 4-out, 1-in setup, and suddenly, the paint looked a whole lot more open. McBride, with his improved shooting and quick decision-making, gave them a guard who could space the floor without compromising the defensive identity. These combinations created ripple effects. With better spacing, R.J. Barrett or now, players like Dante DiVincenzo or OG Anunoby had cleaner driving lanes. Shooters got more daylight. And most importantly, Brunson wasn't being smothered by 2 or 3 defenders every time he crossed half court. But even all of that would have meant nothing if Brunson didn't step up, and he did. When the Celtics dared him to beat them going under screens, switching bigs onto him, loading up the paint, Brunson stayed calm. He picked his spots. He played with pace. He manipulated coverages until they snapped. In that second half, you could feel the shift. The pull-up jumper started falling. The step-backs had rhythm. The ISOs weren't forced, they were calculated. By the third quarter, it wasn't just that the Knicks had solved their problem. It was that their greatest weakness had turned into their greatest advantage. They went from being predictable to unpredictable, from cramped to flowing, from stuck to explosive. And the irony, the guy defenses thought they could ignore Josh Hart, became the key to the entire machine.